Identity inclusion to me means everyone committing to the mission of making everyone feel like they belong. I think it takes people committing to this statement of belonging and making this an actual thing and making this into reality. I think identity inclusion is not just, oh, let's bring in people of all these different identities. I think it's also allowing them to have that space to be heard and feel safe to share their stories. And I think that only comes when people display that motivation of like, I want to hear and you belong here.
So for me, inclusive computing means that we all have equal access to CS resources. We all have equal opportunities to see like people that look like us, people who think like us, working and like contributing to this field.
Basically, when I think of identity, I think it extends far beyond like just how you look externally, but really your interests and everything that you bring to the table also internally. And so being able to bring all of that to like your practices with computer science is really important. Like, I think it's really cool that I've been able to find ways to combine like my love for travel and my love for Black women in general, and also my love for like drumming, hiking, women in general into different things and different projects that I've like had. So for example, another project that I was working on, my family every month, we do this competition called Rabbit Rabbit. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like the first person to say Rabbit Rabbit when the clock hits 12 on the new month gets like luck for that whole month. So I was thinking, I was like, I can't be staying up on a Tuesday night if like April 1st falls on a Tuesday night. So how can I create an app that can automatically send an automated message for me so that I can be getting the luck every month? And it's just really cool to like see that you can do things like that, because I want to win the luck. I mean, it might be cheating in some people's eyes, but I think the hard work makes it not cheating, and trying to figure that out makes it not cheating. But just cool things like that, bringing your different identities and cute things that you do with your families into like computer science to make it work for you is super cool to me. And that's what identity inclusive computing means, teaching people to be able to have the skills to do that from any background and anywhere.
So I think like the different identities that I have, and coming from a single mother household, like we grew up, like my mom is Middle Eastern, we come from a Middle Eastern household. We grew up in a time post 9/11 where it was like very not that fun to be Middle Eastern in Canada or in America, and just like in Western countries in general. And I think that does have a lot to do with what I choose to do with computer science now and education now, and what I do in the future. I think that a lot of socialization post 9/11 has permeated into our society to have this stigmatization against Middle Eastern people, especially against Middle Eastern women. I think there's like a very important intersectional identity there. And growing up with a single mother, I very much saw that, that my mom was essentially like would get falsely, stereotyped a lot of the times, more often than not. And I think that like with what we see today in technology, again, it's like countries of the global South, even beyond the Middle East, that are being excluded from these conversations, from these narratives. When we think about like technological advancement, when Google comes out with some new product, when Facebook comes out with some new social media, we think of, oh yeah, technology is advancing, but is it really advancing if it's only benefiting, half of the world and not the other half? And I think that's really where my passion lies, and how my identities have dictated that.
Identity inclusive computing can actually change so much, like from just the standpoint of like the technology we have today. I don't know if this is really well known, but there are so many issues in like facial recognition technology, like not recognizing like darker skinned people or women in general. And I think that now that we have facial recognition so widely available, like we see on our iPhones, we have it for like the police have access to facial recognition technology. It's so important for like technology to be created with inclusivity in mind. Like, we need representation from all types of people to actually have good representative technology.
So a really good example, which kind of leads into my current research and my current work, is like AI bias. You think of ChatGPT, which is like the most popular large language model out right now, and it's very accessible, so a lot of people use it. And you think, oh, it's advanced so much, and it's like completely, at least what Microsoft and OpenAI claim, is that GPT-4, so the newest edition of ChatGPT, is like has no AI bias. It's not biased at all. It's unbiased. But knowing, poking through the holes a little bit, just pushing the needle a little bit, you'll see that the data that the model was trained on was front-loaded on the past 20 to 30 years. And it comes from the internet as well, which you can imagine, like, in the past 20 to 30 years, again, going back to like that post 9/11 conversation, there was a lot of Islamophobic sentiments or anti-Middle Eastern sentiments. And that is very apparent in ChatGPT. So when you think about, like, when you ask it's an AI model that bears these sort of stereotypes beneath its training data and what it knows, it can further reproduce this harm and amplify it throughout the rest of society. And I think that that's really important to talk about and to have that conversation, to make sure that there are some sort of like safety protocols or regulations for AI, or especially like very large impact technologies, to make sure that they aren't like reproducing these sort of harms, or that the training data is truly like has a fair representation of all identities, not just identities from Western history or Western identities.
Yeah, so identity inclusion to me means to not only acknowledge and make space for marginalized voices, but to also think about how we can celebrate and amplify those voices as well. And I think that's especially important in technology specifically, since, it's important to have a diverse group of people in the designing and creation process of many of the technical products and processes that we use today. So, overall, having that diverse set of people when it comes to that process is really vital in creating technology that's a holistic representation of its users.
I think to make this system better, we need to first create more opportunities for people that we might have overlooked, such as like those, especially at a lower grade, like in like low income community. Some schools may not have computer science teachers to deliver the course, so the students don't have early access to this kind of opportunity, and they might not be able to discover their interest until they enter college. But by then they might have they could have learned more, but they just don't have the opportunity and the resource.
Definitely, looking around the room, seeing people who may not look like you exactly, that can definitely make you feel uncomfortable in some ways, in terms of, maybe you don't feel like you should speak up, or maybe you feel like, you don't see somebody who looks like you really speaking up, so you kind of feel like that you shouldn't, things like that. So being able to find other people who identify similarly as you and might be able to relate to those experiences, it's really comforting in helping you build your own confidence. And also maybe seeing some people who overcame that as well is really inspiring, to kind of see what could happen and the potential that you have and the power that you hold as an individual. And just getting over that feeling of maybe imposter syndrome in those settings. So definitely finding other people who identify similarly as you can help you overcome that feeling.
I also think that having band-aid approaches to identity inclusion is not the way to go. So like what I call it, I don't know if it's a real term, but I call it like corporate diversity, where people, like corporations or even like schools and stuff, they'll just say, oh, look at us, we have like 20% Black population rate, but then like the actual students, the Black students in that school feel like really, really mistreated, or they aren't like given the same resources, or saying like, oh, well, we help people from low income backgrounds, but if those people from low income backgrounds feel like imposters, or are like not given the same resources, or not equitable resources to be able to you know, learn in the same environment as like people who have like all the resources, people who have, you know, their family, their parents are in tech, you know, then like it's not exactly a very safe or inclusive environment. It's kind of just like, it kind of makes these marginalized students think like, why did I even join here, or like come to this, you know, prestigious organization if they're gonna mistreat me? I could have just done much better if I had gone to a less prestigious organization that actually would have cared about me. So I think, yeah, just making sure that we don't just look at the numbers and the statistics, but actually think about people as people, and what can we do to make them feel the most inspired in a space.
So I credit this to my teacher, Andrea. I started attending boarding school in 7th grade. So I left home at a really young age, and I was there until 12th grade. And my teacher, Andrea, and we did not get off on the best foot. This is 7th grade me again with my attitudes. She's someone who I sent an apology to. And I just very much felt like I was more grown. So in class, I wasn't the best. I wasn't listening because I felt like I knew it all. And so she kind of, you know, helped steer me towards the right direction. And she could see that like I was longing for more and longing to like learn something deeper about the world. And so she was the one who first introduced me to computer science in 9th grade. She started a club and she was like, hey, would you like to join? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so we used MIT Scratch, and we were just like working on different things. And then 10th grade, I won a competition in San Francisco where I was able to fly out and do a coding competition. And she flew out with me because my mom wasn't in the States at the time. And just from there, like we kept working and working. And she's really the person who like instilled that passion for computer science and computer science learning in me.
I think one actionable step that all teachers can take is to make time for story. I think there was a quote that I heard recently that humans are just animals who use stories to communicate. And I think making time in class to listen to other people's perspectives, to ask about their family, to ask about tradition is super important in any context. And especially in computer science, I think there's so many avenues to share personal perspectives and creativity. And I think that's a beautiful way to get to know students and where they come from, and to find areas of similarity where there are obvious differences.
I think a lot of the times what I've noticed with students is, especially in my own capacity as a teacher, is sometimes when they don't understand something, it can be really scary to like ask. And so being proactive and asking them, no matter how many times you think it gets annoying, just being proactive and asking them like, hey, do you understand this? Like, do you get it? Like, it's totally okay if you don't. And also giving an example for yourself of like, yeah, I really didn't understand this when I was learning it. So it's really okay if you don't either. It really opens them up and makes them feel more comfortable to seeing like, hey, like, I'm not alone in this. Like, sure, other people are understanding it right now, but like my teacher also was someone who didn't get it. So it must be totally fine. Like she understands it perfectly now. So I can get to that level, and just giving them something to aspire to. So continually asking questions, but then also not being afraid to get down to their level.
Kind of thinking about what I am involved in now, like at UW, there's a lot of student groups that revolve around different people's identities. Like I am a part of a club called Women in Computing, where I'm able to directly connect with students who have the same identities as me. And I feel like that's definitely something that maybe teachers can try to start at their own respective schools, you know, thinking about ways to connect students together who hold similar identities in the computing field. And because I feel like that's definitely, you know, when I was in those classes as a middle schooler and high schooler, I definitely gravitated towards the other women in my class and tried to form that bond. But it would be really great if there was that community that was kind of already pushed towards us and allowed us to find people easier or more comfortably. So I feel like that's definitely something teachers can encourage, trying to make those communities, whether that be through a club like Girls Who Code or just something along those lines to help students find each other and support each other.
I think when people oftentimes start with computer science, my friend Jocelyn was telling me this. She's a biochem and Spanish major, and she was like, I would never take a computer science class because I just don't even know what that's about. Like, I just don't even know. Like, when people say computer science, she has no idea what to envision. All she thinks is like difficult coding and someone behind a screen, like hacking and things. So I guess I would say, like, the biggest thing that I wish that people knew, or like the ways that we could break down barriers, is like simply showing them all the different aspects of computer science. Because that's something I didn't know until recently, when my school sponsored a trip for us to go to the Bay Area and visit companies like Google, Apple, and I didn't know about these jobs like product manager and like all of these different things you could do within the field of computer science. And I was feeling like kind of limited because I was like, I like to code, but it's not particularly, I don't want to sit behind a desk all day. I love talking to people and interacting. And so now that I know about all these like new different things, I think it's super cool. And I also think that it's really important to emphasize that you don't have to do a computer science major specifically in college to learn these things. A lot of the people I talked to were history majors in college or just Spanish majors and things. And then they like had a later love for it. So like just taking classes is like the minimum that you have to do, but it's really good. And like it informs your learning in so many different ways as well.
To thrive, I think something that's really important is just to have a very solid support system, whether that be, through my family, friends, mentors, peers, just having those people that you could go to when you're feeling down or to celebrate your wins is really important in how I kind of evaluate my feelings and be able to support myself and grow my own personal well-being. So just overall surrounding myself with the right people will also just inspire me to continue to pursue my goals and, create this comfortable environment for myself to grow even further.
Yeah, I feel like teachers, like the biggest thing is just like getting to know your students as people before students. And like also just making sure to understand like sometimes like they're difficult like topics to like teach, and there's difficult like things for certain people to learn, but it's not like because of an inherent person. I feel like everyone can learn just in a different way. There's no universal teaching method or like strategy that works with every single student. So I just think it's important that each student just gets what they specifically need, as far as like teachers can actually handle that. Like, I think that's the most important thing that teachers need to do.
I guess that's it. Like, tell more stories, get students excited. I think, especially after the pandemic, we've lost motivation. It's been like a routine and it's been something hard to get back into the rhythm of. But I think adding that little sparkle, little touch of personality and excitement, connection to like the outside world, the people beyond our community, I think is what gets me excited personally and what I think a lot of students would appreciate as well.